FIND is a non-profit organization based in the UK that specializes in financial investigations and strategic corporate research. We investigate the individuals, companies, technologies, and systems that profit and enable from human rights abuses, international crimes, and environmental crimes. FIND was set up to expand and leverage financial investigations capacity in the international justice space. Why financial investigations? Because these crimes are often financially motivated or require funding and resources. So there is often going to be a financial component. Increasingly as well, conflict is privatized, which means that governments often are increasingly relying on private companies to supply arms and technologies that are used in warfare, right? So this could be drones, surveillance technologies, automated systems, data analytics. So there is a clear financial component to that. And as well, financial investigations may also open up the range of mechanisms that you can access to disrupt these states or actors' operations. And they also may open up different kind of accountability mechanisms for survivors and victims. So if you're not looking at the financial, dimensions, you're missing a very big piece of the puzzle. The financial investigation will often depend on, the broader legal or accountability strategy as defined by victims and their advocates. So depending on kind of what that ultimate objective is, we would be defining kind of key objectives within the financial investigations to make sure that is aligned with that ultimate, objective. We work alongside partners at different stages of kind of a case or a project. So in the very early stages, our investigations might be very exploratory in nature, right? Trying to identify key actors that are operating within a specific geography or within a specific sector, trying to understand the financial or corporate infrastructure that these actors rely on, understanding where they're sourcing, specific goods, or where they're, hiding or transferring proceeds of crime. So that might support the kind of early stages of an investigation by, just understanding the broader context and dynamics. It can also support the selection of targets or specific incidents, or specifically in kind of strategic litigation, it might identify potential accountability hooks by linking some of these actors to jurisdictions where you're able to access those mechanisms. In later stages of, a case, we might be conducting more in-depth investigation into a selected group of, individuals or companies that would be of interest. We would be either trying to understand, ownership and control, identifying their specific assets, identifying or trying to link or establish relationships between individuals and companies. It would be a much more kind of targeted investigation, and the objective of that would be both fact-finding and evidence gathering to support a specific, legal action. As a civil society organization, FIND does not have the, investigative powers or subpoena powers of government agencies or law enforcement. So we rely heavily on a range of different sources, primarily open sources, but also at times closed sources or human source inquiries or other strategies for discovery and gathering information that might be relevant for the investigation. FIND works primarily with civil society organizations, which might include community groups, human rights and environmental organizations, strategic litigators, investigative journalists. Although we don't work directly with law enforcement and prosecutors, a lot of our work feeds directly into legal submissions, sanction submissions, regulatory filings, and sometimes criminal complaints. Part of our mission at FIND is also to build financial investigative capacity across the space. So we do deliver a lot of training on open source methods to law enforcement and prosecutors at a range of different kind of organizations and agencies. I think the key challenge of conducting open source financial investigations is, the issue of access. Getting access to information on the individuals, the companies, or the assets that we're conducting research into. And this might vary from, country to country, depending on disclosure requirements or, transparency of that specific jurisdiction. It might also vary from company to company, depending on their public profile, the size of the company, or whether they, operate in a more kind of regulated industry that requires higher disclosure. While we don't have access to detailed financial information, there is still a wealth of information that is, financial documents that are available in public registries. And a lot of it, even if sometimes information might be limited in one jurisdiction, the nature of these networks is that they often touch on a multiple of different jurisdictions. So other jurisdictions might open up, avenues for further research or opportunities to get additional information. I've mentioned that financial investigations are, a key and a very sharp tool in the toolkit, but at the same time, they are still just one piece of the puzzle. So our most kind of successful, investigations are always done, in close collaboration with other investigators, in close consultation with the lawyers and other members of, the broader kind of investigative team. One of the biggest challenges would be that if you don't kind of maintain a close feedback loop, right, or constant communication and establish kind of the correct, information sharing protocols, you might end up with investigations that are, disjointed or fragmented or, don't necessarily kind of match or focus on kind of the issues at hand. Related to that, another potential challenge is often the costs that might be associated with financial investigations, which often require, sometimes access to pricey proprietary databases to get access to more detailed or technical information, but also costs associated with the retrieval of records from official registries, including corporate registries or property registries. If you are not being, very strategic in the investigations or very targeted, these costs might, add up quite a bit, which makes them less accessible to other organizations. One of the biggest advantages of, obtaining open source financial evidence is that its building blocks are documents obtained from primary and often official sources. So this would include corporate filings, financial statements, but also potentially kind of title deeds, charge documents, things that are obtained from, government sources and can be easily verified. In that sense, the documents that we obtain are easily verifiable and have high evidentiary kind of value. We also rely on a lot of kind of secondary sources to do more of the exploratory research or when we're looking at more kind of technical aspects. If we're using more technical resources, like for instance, domain analysis tools or looking into, satellite imagery, for instance, or when we're obtaining or using records from trade databases. Typically, we will contextualize the information, what it demonstrates, and also what it doesn't demonstrate, and what its limitations are, so that they can be properly assessed by whoever is reading kind of our research and findings. If we're relying on kind of digital materials obtained from other types of secondary sources, like social media captures and things like that, we tend to use those mostly for, lead generation for the most part. So we will try to corroborate that information from official registries. If we're not able to, corroborate the information from primary sources, then those, we will typically either caveat them heavily or exclude them altogether, depending on, the source of that information. So I've mentioned that as a nonprofit organization, we have limited access to private data on individuals or companies. On the flip side, as a civil society organization, we might have much more flexibility in terms of adopting innovative tools and techniques and, finding more creative ways of gathering information. We also, rely heavily on developing strong relationships with local civil society organizations, investigative journalists, and a lot of the way we approach investigations and gathering information is in kind of developing, information sharing with other civil society groups that might be closer on the ground, might have knowledge of the local context, and might also be willing to share information. So often we can kind of serve as a bridge in between kind of different actors in the justice ecosystem.